Hello, everyone, and welcome to At Barron's. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, Ceci Kurzman, who is the founder of Nexus Management, also on a lot of boards like Warner Music and UTA and Revlon. But most importantly, she is a music industry veteran on the label side and the management side, and knows everything about what's going on in the music business.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
First of all, what is Nexus Management? What is that part of your world like?
Nexus Management was actually started as my management company to manage the artists. When I left Sony Music in 2004, lit out on my own, I named the company Nexus because Shakira was the first artist I signed to my management company, and I wanted something that demonstrated both the Latin and the Anglo world and kind of sat at this cross-section of those two worlds. So Nexus.
All right, so wait a minute though. Shakira was your first client?
She was my first client.
What is that like? What is it like managing Shakira?
Very all-encompassing. Shakira, I worked with Shakira when I was at Sony for many years, from the time she was in Colombia and signed to Sony Colombia till we brought her into the Anglo world. So when I first met her, she didn't speak English. Now she speaks English better than I do. And, we really hit it off. And I championed her career inside Sony. And I was just attracted to her intellect. When we first met, I swear to God, she was probably 18, 19 years old. She was reading a book about this big about the Templar Knights. And she's this wicked intellect. She's got an IQ off the charts, and she approached her entire career from an intellectual perspective, which I appreciated. When we would go on tour, most artists ask for what we call a vanity put on tour. It usually comes in the form of, a trainer or, a Reiki specialist or something, somebody who comes along that's a bit of a discretionary put. Shakira asked for a history professor so that as she traveled around the world, she had somebody who could brief her and, study the local markets when she was in town. That's the sort of artists you're working with. It also comes with a lot of other stuff because you have somebody who has such a big mind that they're intellectualizing everything they do. There's nothing accidental about her and her career.
It all makes sense to me, Ceci, because where I saw Shakira? Davos. She was at the World Economic Forum, and I was like, what's Shakira doing here? And,
yes.
She was engaged with the content and with all the people there.
She was indeed. We had her, she spoke at Oxford. She convened one of the, I think, the foremost groups in Latin America to combat poverty. She is a poet laureate in Colombia. She was Gabriel Garcia Marquez's sort of protege. So she's got a little going on.
Yeah. All right, let me pull back a little bit and ask you about the music industry. So much going on, but big picture. Okay, this was a business that lost its way, starting with Napster. Then it found its way with Apple Music, Spotify, etc. And now maybe it's at a crossroads again.
Well, I think it's an industry that loses its way and finds its way over and over again. And it's still a very young industry when you think about it. The recorded music industry is still quite young. And it is in a constant state of evolution. And like many other industries, it has its ebbs and flows. It usually has a sort of 10-year pattern where innovation and technology gets introduced that disrupts and then evolves the business, right? We had vinyl, and we retapped that into cassette, then we had CD, then we had downloads, and then, now streaming. But your point about Napster, which was one of the many sort of disruptions that caused the business to sit up and take notice and sort of, get smacked out of its slumber. Napster and what Napster preceded was a foregone conclusion. And it was early when it was Napster, and if you think about it, if the major labels had taken their cue from the demand that Napster created, they would have been there instead of Apple, right? They would have been there and been able to kind of own the digital music business, and instead they've abdicated it to a third party. So all of that data that sits on the other end of the, your third party partner, it does not belong to the labels, does not belong to the artists. And if they could have sort of seen the winds of change and embraced it, rather than sort of been burdened by the status quo and the worry about sort of obsolescence, the industry could have been in the hands of the people creating the content.
So what is going on right now? I mean, fast forward 5 years from now, and what are the challenges exactly that the business faces?
Well, first, I think challenges are a great thing for a business, right? You need your headwinds as well as your tailwinds, because it gives moments of pause to reflect on what the business needs to be. And I think what we're recognizing now is that the end user is not the retailer, is not the platform, the streaming platform. The end user is the consumer. And, how do we become more consumer-centric as an industry, rather than curating and massaging and giving the people what we want rather than what they want? Enabling the people and the consumers to be the advocates for their own taste. And I think that's the inflection point we're in, trying to really understand how to super serve the fan and the end user as the customer, as opposed to super serving the streaming platforms and the other partners that surround the music industry. And I think it's going to be a rocky road for a minute, but I think those companies and that are willing to embrace technology, it's here to stay. It's going to be a very important piece of what we do as an enabler and not a blocker, are going to be, there's nothing but net. Music is essential. Music is like air, right? It's not going anywhere. And as long as you're close to the source, whatever that source may be, it could be a songwriter, it could be a performer, it could be an AI, right? But as long as you're close to the source of creating music, you're winning.
I want to go back to AI, but I also want to ask you about TikTok. I know you're a big fan, and you have some real thoughts about how it's impacting the music business.
Well, I would say it's not that I'm a fan. I'm a user.
Right.
I'm a fan as a user.
Right.
I think what the platform has done for fandom and for content creation, and really democratized it and put it in the hands of the end users, again, the customers, is brilliant. I think that, again, is the natural evolution of the power base shifting to the end user and the consumer. So I think that's brilliant, because when you see, it doesn't have to be professional, it doesn't have to be polished, it has to be heartfelt. And when you combine heartfelt storytelling or humor and music and video, and you put it in the hands of the consumer, it's super compelling. And what you realize is actually the consumer likes the stuff that their peer group is creating more than they like the stuff that we've agonized over for years to put in front of them. And they're quite capable and able to be able to make content that people want to consume. And it's not everything. There's
Right.
a lot of stuff out there that nobody wants to consume, but by the way, that's great too. Just the fact that people have an outlet is magnificent. And I'm not saying that TikTok doesn't have issues in terms of youth culture and how it's employed by kids and how they feel about their social standing because of TikTok. But I do think, that is now the platform of discovery for music. The magnificent thing that it's done in the music industry is it has a tapped catalog, right? Fleetwood Mac is hot again because one guy holding onto the back of a truck, playing Dreams, went viral. And all of a sudden, the catalog's up, the song's at the top of the charts, a generation who never heard of Rumors is tapped into Rumors, and then it has the knock-on effect. We now have Amazon just released Daisy and the Six, which is a new show that is inspired by Fleetwood Mac and the relationship the relationships going on within Fleetwood Mac. And all of a sudden, that's inspired a biopic, and there's a lot that there's an interest in the band and the music again.
That's a great example. And in the Kansas State example?
Kansas State's pregame ritual, Kansas State's men's basketball pregame ritual uses a DaBaby song. And the ritual in March Madness became viral, and with it, the song became viral. And so now that song, which was not a single, is now a big hit by virtue of that. So again, emotion, visuals, music, the combination is really, really threatening.
Speaking of threatening, I want to get back to AI. And that's an opportunity, it's a problem, it's a threat, it's a lifeline, it's a new avenue, it could be any of those, and it probably is all those things.
It is all of those things. It is a existential threat, but with that, it's also...
Lay out for everyone why specifically. Let's start at 101 here.
AI, November 2022, ChatGPT, all of a sudden, the world who's referenced AI is all of a sudden it is changing how we do things. Kids are writing papers using AI. You're creating plans. You're booking travel. So much. It's now incorporated into our everyday lives in a very, very short period of time, and we're just scratching the surface of its many uses. Recently, there was an AI-created sound-alike of Jay-Z with original lyrics. So you have an audio songs that are great songs with one of the most recognizable voices in music, and it's out there. What's the recourse? Who owns the rights? Does Jay-Z have any recourse? Is there liability? We don't know. It hasn't been legislated. So there's a rights issue. But beyond that, we now know that AI can create songs that are hits. They can write songs. AI can write songs. AI can write lyrics, create melody. All of a sudden, we have this notion that, we have to understand that we spend a lot of time and energy and expertise trying to create the best in breed in terms of music and songwriting. And here is a platform, a technology that can do it better instantaneously.
For some reason, I'm thinking about Natalie Cole and Nat King Cole, that duet. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Isn't that something, right?
It is something, and that's a great example of something really beautiful that can be created, where you bring back to life phenomenal, artists that aren't with us. I would love to think that that all of the uses are through a filter of what we think is right and what we think is good. But I also want to acknowledge music, again, is for the end user. If the music was created by Neil Young, or if it was created by an AI technology, does it matter if the consumer likes it and wants to consume it? I think that's, historically, we've run the risk of being precious about what good looks like and what good sounds like, and who are the arbiters of what is good. And now that's being taken out of our hands, first with the consumer and the end user, sort of challenging what they want is what they think is good. And now, we have technology that's going to create based on what the consumer wants. And they're going to put forward music that is absolutely aligned with what the consumer wants. And that will be how hits are created.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.